The Angels played very un-Angel-like last night against the Royals, and it's the reason they won the game.
You are Locked On Angels, your daily Los Angeles Angels podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Yusei Kikuchi set the tone for the game in the first inning last night. And we're going to tell you what he did. And what are the Angels doing about all the strikeouts? Jeff Flesher has a great article and some good interviews, and we're going to talk about that today. And how should the Halos plan to use Reed Detmers in 2026?
Thanks for being here for this episode of Locked On Angels, where it's your team every day. You've got the Frisch brothers here with you, a.k.a. the Super Halo Bros. My name is Jon, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother Jon.
Mike, it's the end of the season. I'm hanging on by a thread over here. It's like the second time in 3 weeks that I've been sick, so I apologize for the NPR voice, I guess you could say, the PBS voice, the news voice. Hey, we got a win last night, didn't we?
We did. Yeah, 3-2 last night. Jon got a couple takeaways from the game. First takeaway, the first inning set the tone for Yusei Kikuchi in his start last night. He threw 6 pitches.
Yep.
Let me just say that again. He threw 6 pitches.
How many did he throw, Mike?
I can't do another 6. That would be inappropriate.
That's what you did there.
Yeah, but he threw 6 pitches in the first inning, Jon, and had a 1 pitch out to start the game. This was his best first inning of the entire year. And he went 5 innings, gave up just 1 hit, 1 run. He walked 1, 6 Ks, did leave the game with some cramping. Jon, 178 and 1/3 innings pitched this season for him. It's a career high. His ERA sits at 3.99, 7 wins, 11 losses, 33 starts for Yusei Kikuchi this season. Tell me about how you're going to talk about Kikuchi's season this offseason.
Yeah, I think it was better than we might have expected coming off of the kind of career that Kikuchi has had. Now, I'm not going to fault him for the 7 wins, 11 losses, because Mike, a lot of the times this season, Angels starting pitching had kept the Angels in the game, especially early on. Remember when the bats went silent? They went cold. All they were doing was swinging and missing and watching strike 3, right? And there were a lot of times where guys like Kikuchi or Hendricks or Tyler Anderson would give you 5-6 strong innings of 3 runs or less, and a deficit that the Angels should have been able to overcome more often than not. So I'm not going to fault him for the wins and the losses. Getting under that 4 ERA at the end of this game, I think, was significant for Yusei Kikuchi, and probably would have hit that 180 mark in innings pitched had he not had to leave this game early with the cramping. But you know how weird the weather has been in Southern California, the stormy, hot, gross weather. It causes a lot of cramps, especially basically it's that Midwest weather that causes a lot of cramping issues and things like that. So when I talk about Kikuchi this offseason, I'm going to talk about that it was a successful signing. However, he's not an ace. He's the ace of this staff.
Yeah.
But on any other team, Mike, he's probably a 3, maybe a 2 at best. And so I'm still going to, toot that horn of we got to add some starting pitching, whether that's the Angels going into their depth and giving some young guys a chance, but they got to go out there and get a guy, and maybe more than one guy. It's got to be 2 number 2s. You know what I'm saying? It can't be back of the rotation types like a Kyle Hendricks, even though, Kyle Hendricks ended up having a pretty, what we expected from Kyle Hendricks, maybe a little bit better than that. We talked about that yesterday on the show. But as far as Yusei Kikuchi, I'm going to call it a success. I appreciate the fact that the Angels were able to take a chance on him. The fact that he came here and wanted to turn some things around for the Angels. I love that mentality. I love the fact that he was ticked off about getting pulled from the game in his last start against the Brewers, right? This is the kind of guy we need on the staff, and I appreciate having him in the rotation. How do you feel about his year?
When I talk about his season, this offseason, I'm going to talk about how it could have easily been an 11-7 season for him.
Yeah.
Because the guy was in games, the guy left games with the lead, and the Angels bullpen did not do him any good. And the most recent start where he was removed early, he had the lead, and it was against the Brewers, and they took him out and would have won the game, but the Angels bullpen, Jose Fermin, gave up the tying run, and then they ended up losing that game. So he could have easily been 11-7, and that would have been tying his career high. So I think it was a successful signing by Perry Manassian. He's certainly not an ace. I'll reiterate everything that you've just said. And you're right. They need to go and get somebody to be the leader of this rotation. I think Jose Soriano has that potential. I think they could get somebody that could be an ace and then Soriano and then Kikuchi. But I'm also really going to be comfortable if they do get kind of 2 number 2s, because I do think they need four guys they can count on, and then let that 5th spot be a spot that they can rotate in and out with some of the young guys who end up proving themselves. And John, I'm going to go out on a limb, and I think that the guy that could potentially be in that 5th spot in 2026, Sam Aldeguiri, because he's somebody that has shown to adjust and shown to work on things. I think he's somebody that understands, I got to get strike 1, I got to get strike 2. And so I think he's probably the one that I would say is the front runner for that 5th spot in 2026, depending on what happens this offseason, who they sign, and what spring training looks like. But I'm going to be cheering for him, rooting for him, because I think that he would be a great starter for this Angels rotation.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out over the offseason. Second takeaway, Mike, you alluded to it. The Angels scored in non-Angel ways. The first run of the game came in the bottom of the 2nd when Luis Rengifo hit a double, Christian Moore singled, and with runners at 1st and 3rd, Oswald Peraza hit an RBI ground out, and Rengifo was able to score. The Angels got their 3rd run in the bottom of the 4th with a Peraza single. He steals second base. Rivero grounded back to the pitcher. He turned to try to get Peraza out at 2nd, but he threw the ball into center field where Peraza was able to come around and score. They put the ball in play.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line here. They put the ball in play, and look what happens. Even though, yes, in our next takeaway, we're going to talk about how the Angels got that 2nd run of the game. But look, you mentioned it at the beginning. This was a very un-Angels-like game where we have said multiple times, even against Kansas City, I think back when they were in Kansas City, we said, hey, guys, play that tape over and over again. Watch the kind of ball that you just played, because every time they play Kansas City, they play social ball, don't they, Mike?
Yeah, and it's been interesting to watch because this happens almost once a week, maybe every week
every
and a
2
half,
weeks, yeah,
right? Like,
yeah.
We see a game like this where they just don't look like the same team, but they're doing what they need to do to put the ball in play. They're doing what they need to do to move runners over, productive outs, stealing bags, right? And then it's like they forget that that's actually what helped them win, and they go back to what they were doing before, and that's what gets them in trouble. And this is a team that has proven to be successful if they get aggressive on the base pass. And we've said it on this show that Bo Porter talked a lot about, we're going to cause chaos on the base pass. We're going to make the pitcher uncomfortable. And they haven't done any of that this year. And a part of that is because they've been swinging for the fences. And I think they're trying to stay healthy. But I think about what Logan O'Hoppe said about saving his body and what the coaches said to him. And he said he feels the best he's ever felt in September, but it hasn't been the best season. I wonder if that same narrative was something that was communicated to this team, like a Joe Adell and some of the other players, like, hey, we don't want you to really tear up your body, stealing bags and pushing the pitcher to keep an eye on you. We want you to be healthy at the plate, which I appreciate to some degree. But I think the Angels' success is found in causing a lot of chaos on the bags. Look, I love that Joe Adell had a career high in home runs and RBIs. But if it meant a higher batting average and a higher on-base percentage and 10 less home runs for Joe Adell, I'm taking it, especially if it meant 10 more wins for this Halo team, because he's running the bases and he's causing havoc. And it's not just him, it's everybody. Zach Neto is the perfect example of what can happen at the plate, but also on the base pass. He was somebody that was a threat, and he was constantly stealing. I'm 100% good with somebody taking the extra bag, and 100% good with somebody trying to steal, even if they get thrown out, because they're trying to stir things up. They're trying to mix things up. Bryce Teodosio, he's another guy. He's got the speed. They haven't utilized him to his greatest ability. They should just unleash him. As soon as he gets to first base, he should be like Ellie De La Cruz. Go. Especially in the last few games. Go. Figure out if you can steal. Try to get second and third. right? Practice that now. Why not practice that now? Because that is something I think he brings to this team. That's the dynamic he brings. Ultimately, what they did last night is, I think, the team they need to be in 2026.
Yeah. Yeah. You know what's funny? Did you see Christian Moore asleep at the wheel at second base with the pop-up on 2 outs? And look, the guy had a great game defensively, offensively, but man, why are you watching the play?
Yeah.
Bro, why aren't you rounding third by the time that ball drops, right? And I think that's, as much as we say this was a very un-Angel-like game, that was the epitome of Angels baseball this season. That was the epitome of, hey, there's an extra run that you could have picked up because of Kansas City's faults. And Kansas City had 3 errors in this game, Mike. And so that's how the Angels were able to cause some chaos and cause those throwing errors and all the situational baseball they were playing. But I look at that and I think, man, aren't you running on 2 outs with a ball in the air since Little League? I don't know.
Right.
How does that happen?
There's no reason to freeze in that moment. You should have your head down, running as hard as you can, because there's always the potential of that. But that's what happens when you have a casual culture. That's what happens when you're not playing for anything. And that's what happens when Ray Montgomery is your major league manager.
Yeah, I think that's what I was trying to get at too, is just that feels like a culture issue for that to happen in this instance. Third takeaway, Mike. Taylor Ward hit his 36th home run of the year, came in the bottom of the third. It was a necessary run because this game did end up being 3-2 in favor of the Angels. Mike, what's the narrative going to be around Taylor Ward's offseason coming up in December and January? What are people going to be saying?
Outside of Anaheim and Angel fans, it will be MLB Network talking about the number one trade potential and getting a left fielder, and Taylor Ward's going to be at the top of that list.
Yeah.
They're going to talk about all the teams that could really thrive if they got Taylor Ward and what he could do. They're going to talk about, man, look at his offensive numbers. Look what he did this year. In Angel land, we're going to be thankful for a big year from Taylor Ward. Obviously, he was our biggest offensive threat, but there's going to be a caveat every time his name comes up. We're going to go, yeah, but remember when he looked at 3 strikes down the middle and didn't swing with runners on? Yeah, you remember when he was casual in left field, right? And so I think that the Angels need to really consider doing something with this guy this offseason and infusing their team with ready now players. I wouldn't get players that aren't ready now. I would get ready now players. And if they're not going to be players that can immediately perform, you've already seen them kind of prove themselves, major, minor leagues, then I would go, okay, give me like the best prospects you got. And I'm going to, that's how I would negotiate this right now, because I get that there's a conversation about like, how do you replace his offense? But if the Angels do what we just talked about in our second takeaway and they push the narrative on the bases, then losing Taylor Ward's bat and replacing him with somebody else like a Matthew Lugo, or maybe moving Shawnuel out there, or because you're going to have Trout and Soler and you're going to have Adele, maybe that's your outfield, right? There's a lot of scenarios that could play here. I think Taylor Ward could be somebody you could go and trade and maybe get a good arm for, or maybe get a really strong minor league guy for, ready now player, possibly. I think that should be the conversation that the Angels have this offseason, because he's probably not going to put up these numbers next season. He probably will be a good offensive threat in this lineup, but he's not somebody that makes this lineup better. He's somebody that just represents a pretty good kind of player. I think he could be great on a good team, or good on a great team, right? Like plays left field in Yankee Stadium or in Boston. Then I think he could really be an impactful player because they've surrounded him with impactful players.
Absolutely. Hey, thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Coming up, what are the Angels going to do about all the strikeouts? Well, they had some thoughts, and Mike and I have our thoughts, and we'll get into that in just a minute.
The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure that you're ready for all of the action. Right now, new customers can bet $5, and if your bet wins, you get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Using FanDuel is so easy. You can bet on player props, build a same-game parlay, or even jump in as the live action unfolds. And again, quick, easy, and the best way to add a little bit more energy to your Sunday. So if you're ready to play, download the FanDuel app right now. You can visit FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. And if it wins, you're going to get $300 in bonus bets.
This is the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Hey, we're talking Angels baseball with you every Monday through Friday, wherever you get podcasts. We're on YouTube. We're on your TV, on the apps, right? Is that what the kids say, Mike? The apps?
On the apps.
On the apps. I'm getting old. I'm a dad now. I'm getting old. But the biggest thing we want you to take away from this is, whether you're watching or listening, come over to today's show on YouTube, get in the comment section, because we read every comment. We love hearing from you there. And often those comments contribute to our conversations here on Locked On Angels. So the best way to get in touch with us is there. Of course, you can hit us up on social media at Locked On Angels, at Super Halo Rose, wherever you social your medias.
John, we know strikeouts have been a big problem for the Halos this year, and they're closing in.
Understatement of the year right there.
They're closing in on the MLB record. Probably won't get there, but the record was set by the Twins in 2023. They had 1,654 strikeouts, but here's the big difference. The Twins that year had 87 wins, and they won the division. The Halos this year have 87 losses, and so very different in those two teams. So the strikeouts didn't stand out for the Twins, but stand out for the Halos because it has cost them a lot of runs this year. So what are the Halos going to do about all of these strikeouts? John, Taylor Ward had some things to say. Why don't you share that with us?
Yeah, he said, I think our power guys, including myself, should probably take this offseason and maybe try to make some adjustments to strike out less, to have a better two-strike approach. The problem, though, according to Taylor Ward, is that he doesn't want to change his swing with two strikes, meaning he doesn't want to have two types of swings at the plate. Ward said, I want to focus on one swing, but you can choke up and still have the same swing. Maybe also change your mindset with two strikes, but that's easier said than done. Now, the question here is, why are they striking out so much? And Ray Montgomery, interim manager, said that it has to do with how many pitchers teams are using. Here's what he meant by that. He said teams are now happy to pull their starters quickly and then use a stable of relievers throwing upward of 100 miles an hour for one inning at a time. Pitching labs have helped pitchers learn subtle grip changes that can add a couple of inches of break to a slider or more ride to a fastball, making the pitches that miss at bats.
So Johnny Washington, of course, had some comments about this. And what does he think about the Halos approach? He said, well, the players aren't trying to strike out. Right? Really? Okay.
Duh.
Thanks, Johnny. He said it's just one of those years where obviously we've struck out a bunch as a group, and my hope is that we'll get better over time. One way that they'll get better, according to Johnny, is that they work the count and draw walks. He said the real value is creating more opportunities on base. I think that that's where the real value lies. John, there's a few different thoughts here. So I would love to hear your thoughts on these thoughts, because I didn't really hear any tangible solutions. And when they got near it, Taylor Ward, it was almost like, yeah, we could do this, but so give me your thoughts on what you heard from these guys.
Well, the first thing that jumps out to me is Johnny Washington. Say bye-bye to your job, bro, because the fact that you're sitting there saying, I hope that we can get better. Yeah, and I hope that the Angels win the World Series, but that's not going to happen, is it, Johnny Washington? Especially with you as the hitting coach who has a track record of most strikeouts in the league with every team that you've been the hitting coach and been part of, going back to the Padres 2019. Good grief. My hope is we get better.
Yeah.
Look, he says something about working counts and drawing walks. Well, you had all year to do it, and you certainly didn't do that. And so the opportunities that you did draw walks was mostly Mike Trout from the third spot drawing walks, not from the first spot, as we've been clamoring for all season. He's finally up in the number one spot and the number two spot, but they kept moving him around and out of the third and in and out of the third spot all season. But he said, I think the real value is we create more opportunities to get on base. Then do it, because the approach that you're doing right now is not working. That drives me insane. When you have statistical facts in front of you that you are the worst team in baseball when it comes to strikeouts, and that's your answer. Your answer is a non-answer of, I hope we get better. And, maybe it's working the count. Maybe it's this. Maybe it's that. Mike Trout works the count all the time, Mike. But the problem is he still stares at strike three. He still swings through strike three. So working the count isn't going to be the solution here. It's like you said, everybody, they get to the line, but then they back off of it. And that to me just speaks to the culture of the coaching staff. It speaks to the culture of the team at the dish and what they've been taught. And what they've been taught is Johnny Washington's approach of end the at-bat when you need to end the at-bat. When you get your pitch and you get the one that you're looking for, that's the one. But again, as we've said many times on this show, that removes 50% of the equation. The pitcher who's trying to strike you out has a say in how your at-bat goes. They're not going to serve you cookies and say, try to hit it. That's not how this game works. And that's the approach that Johnny Washington has infected this team with, infected these hitters with, Mike.
John, I hope this show goes really well. I hope it goes really well.
Me too.
Do you hope it goes really well?
I hope we get 100,000 views on this show tomorrow, Mike.
The other thing that irritated me in this segment, as we talk about this article from Jeff Fletcher, is Ray Montgomery has, like, he's pontificating about how pitchers are better and how teams are approaching pitching, and they're bringing in these guys for one inning at a time and stuff like that, which isn't wrong,
right?
And why strikeouts might be more. But so is this not happening with the Toronto Blue Jays?
Right.
Like, is this not happening with other teams that aren't striking out? No, It's happening with your team. So I love that it's like this 80,000 foot level of like, well, actually, let me pull my glasses down to the tip of my nose and tell you exactly what's happening in baseball right now. Instead of, you know what I mean? Like, instead of going, our team, we're swinging and missing, man. And it's so, again, it feels like a non-answer.
Well, and to add to your point, when people argue about like Mike Trout, is he clutch? Is he not clutch? He hasn't hit a walk-off home run in forever. You know who pitches against you in the ninth inning? The team's best bullpen arm, aka their closer.
Yeah.
And closers are pretty darn good. And that's what the issue is here. So I don't often look at ninth inning performances for any team or any hitters at the plate, because that's when the best of the best are usually in the game. And that's part of what Ray Montgomery is saying here, but it doesn't answer the question for why is this an Angel-specific problem? Because it is.
Yeah.
They're the top of the league in strikeouts, Mike. And the fact is, no other team has a different situation. They're all dealing with the best relievers across baseball. They're all dealing with starters getting pulled after 5 or after 6 and then having to deal with 100-mile-an-hour guys. I get that. That's a fact of life. That's part of being a baseball team right now. But it doesn't excuse how the Angels have handled that. And if Ray knows this to be true, then you got to make the adjustment. You can't just accept that and go, well, it's these best relievers are coming out against it. Right. So then do something about it instead of trying to make excuses here and pontificating about the state of baseball right now.
Yeah. And then when you talk about Taylor Ward, he's talking about power guys maybe taking the offseason to adjust their approach with 2 strikes and have maybe a better 2-strike approach. And then he said, the problem is I just don't want to change my swing. And then in the same sentence, he says, but I guess I could choke up and have the same swing. Right. Like, so it sounds like he's working it out. You know what that quote sounded like? It sounded like Reed Detmers sitting on the bench, working on his grip when Matt Wise was the pitching coach. And he went, oh, you know what I could do? I could throw it this way.
Right.
Like, he's figuring it out. Why is he figuring it out?
Yeah.
Like, and I get that they're players and they should be figuring this stuff out, but Johnny Washington wasn't involved in that at all. Like, this is what Johnny should have said. Johnny should have said, our 2-strike approach is terrible. And we are not shortening up our swings, and we are not trying to just make contact. We're trying to crush it. And so what we're working on is bringing the guys out on the field, bringing the guys into the cage, and we're working on slapping the ball. I saw a great video of what Barry Bonds taught, who's the Brewers superstar that came from the Marlins, blanking on his
Christian
name.
Yelich.
Right? Thank you. Christian Yelich said that Barry Bonds taught him when he was the hitting coach for the Marlins that you want to when you swing at the bat, you almost want to swing it like you're going to hit the ball off of the plate, because what it does is it puts a reverse spin on the ball and you end up launching the ball. And so Christian Yelich said that changed my career. Barry Bonds changed my career. What it allowed him to do is go to the opposite field. What it allowed him to do is stay in the strike zone a little bit longer. And what it allowed him to do is, I'm going to put the ball in play. It's going to hit the plate or it's going to go over the fence or somewhere in between. But his goal was to put the ball in play. So it changed his career. Obviously it did, right?
Yeah.
Obviously he got better. So That's the type of stuff you want to hear from your hitting coach. We just don't hear that from Johnny Washington.
Yeah. The problem is that there's no standards for different situations, right? Johnny Washington has a one-size-fits-all approach to how the Angels should handle their at-bat, no matter the count, right?
Yeah.
It's you got to get that, you got to end the at-bat when you got to end the at-bat, right? And essentially find your pitch and hit it, the one that you want. The problem with that is you need to have standards. Hey, what do you do when it's a 3-0 count?
Yeah.
What do you do when it's an 0-2 count, a 1-2 count? What do you do when there's somebody on third and you need to get them home? There's less than 2 outs. What are you going to do? And I say, have the players answer that.
Yeah.
And that's the approach I would take. And as a teacher, a former teacher, like let them answer you and give them, hey, that's correct or not quite, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the problem is there's not a situational standard for every situation. And I think that's been the issue with the Angels this season is that every situation requires the same solution in Johnny Washington's eyes and in these hitters' eyes. But that's not how baseball works. That's not how life works.
No.
And so for these guys to try to apply one answer to a multitude of situations, that's not getting the job done. And that's why the Angels lead the league in strikeouts this season.
Fellas, you have probably heard of Viagra and Cialis. You maybe even tried them, but if you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Rougiette. It's not just another ED pill. It's a total game changer for confidence. Rougiette combines 2 doctor-trusted medications in one dual-action formula. The effects can last up to 36 hours. That's confidence all day, all night, and even into the next day. The process is simple. Connect with a board-certified doctor. It's 100% online. And if prescribed, your treatments ship discreetly right to your front door. So want to level up your confidence in the bedroom? Head to Rougiette.com and use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB. You're going to get 15% off your first order. That's RUGIET.com, promo code LOCKEDONMLB.
Mike, Reed Detmers was recently placed on the 60-day IL due to an elbow issue, but the good news this week was that the test showed that there was no structural damage, does not need surgery, so that's a huge sigh of relief for Detmers and for us Angel fans. Detmers added that he's planning on having a normal offseason. He said that he'd prefer to start next year, but he will do whatever the team wants him to do. So the good news from Detmers is that it's nice to hear that there's no structural damage and he's willing to be flexible with his role next season. So I present you with this question since Reed Detmers has long been your boy, even back to our original podcast. You loved Reed Detmers. And for me, it was Patrick Sandoval. And, well, you won, my friend. Detmers, starting next year or relieving next year, what do you think makes more sense for the Halos right now?
Makes more sense for them to start him. It makes more sense for him to be in the starting rotation because if you run with young guys, let's say they don't get anybody. Let's say they don't sign anybody, which is highly likely, right?
Taking the over on that, that's for sure.
Yeah, so Kikuchi, Soriano, Detmers at number 3, right? And TBW has said, and I think Jared Timms has said from Talking Halos, they have said that this guy's the key to that starting rotation. He's an ace. And I think, John, he's got that potential. What I think we'll get from Reed Detmers next year is similar Reed Detmers that we got in years past. I think that the adjustment we'll see is that he may not blow up and give up 5 to 7 runs on a regular basis. I think we'll see Reed Detmers in the same vein as Jose Soriano. He'll have a couple of really great starts, and then he'll have one start where 3 2/3 and they just got to him, right? Threw too many pitches, tried to strike out everybody. He'll give up, 5 hits, 7 runs, and strike out 12, right?
Yeah.
But it's 3 2/3. I think we'll see that. So I could see him being somebody that slots in that third spot in this rotation. And that would make sense for a team that probably won't go and get anybody and will probably rely on some of the young guys. And maybe if they do get somebody, it'll be more in the vein of Kyle Hendricks, because what they've taught us the last 10 years is they're going to do the same exact thing and expect different results. So what makes sense for this starting rotation is Reed Detmers being in the starting rotation. I think that they have proven this year that they have enough bullpen pieces where they don't need Reed. Plus, They're getting some of their young guns back next season.
Yeah.
And I know that some won't be healthy, but they're going to build towards that. And so all of it looks good for Reed Detmers to move into the rotation. Where do you think it makes sense for him, in your opinion?
I'm of the opinion that he needs to be in the rotation as well, because he has always been a starter, Mike, even back to college. And the fact is that his stuff in terms of being a starter, it just plays, man. And so TBW and Jared Timms are so right, and I agree with them. His stuff plays. And the biggest hurdle for him throughout his career has been everything between the ears. I feel like we've discussed that a million times on this show. But what did you see from Reed Detmers this year? You saw a guy change his mentality from timid to attack mode, right? We saw him have terrible bullpen outings when he went back-to-back games, got one out and surrendered 12 runs, right? And it was like, what are you doing to this kid? Why are you trotting him out there again? And then he buckled down and he learned to attack the strike zone. Mike, the biggest issue with him is, he'd have 10 strikeouts, but he'd have 96 pitches through 4 innings, right? Or he'd walk 8 guys in an outing. And now it feels like somebody told him, Reed, you have some of the best stuff in pitchability and across MLB. You have some of the best pitches. You have some of the best movement. You have some of the best deceptive stuff out there. You're good. And so you need to use it. Attack. Don't be timid. Don't think that you're not good enough. And that's why we say it's between the years for Reed Detmers, because you could see that through all of the starts that he's had where the confidence wasn't there. And I think what he's gained this year is that confidence simply because he had success out of the bullpen and he learned how to attack. He learned how to be a bulldog. And I think that he can take that confidence with him into a starter's role. If he treats every batter the way he treats every inning as a reliever, he's going to have success. He can't. That's the biggest thing. Can he take that mindset from the bullpen and apply it to a start where he knows he's going to have to go through that starting lineup 2 or 3 times, where he knows that he's going to have to go at least 6 innings to put his team in a position to win, right? That's the biggest question. Chris Cortez, top prospect for the Angels, said, yeah, I think he can do it when he was on our show. And I feel like a lot of people probably feel the same way about Reed Detmers. Can he take the mindset that he learned as a reliever this year and apply it to being a starter? Because again, the biggest hurdle for him was his own lack of confidence. He found that confidence in the bullpen. So step up and do it somewhere else, and do it in the role that you were born to do, that you were made to do, that you can do. It's just a matter of, do you trust yourself? Do you trust your stuff as well? And can you trust the mentality you picked up in the bullpen? Can you trust yourself enough to apply that as a starter? Because he said, I'll be wherever they want me to be. Mike, they need him as a starter. Yeah. He's too good. He's too good to not be a starter. I appreciate the fact that he pitched well out of the bullpen this year, but man, if he can put it together as a starter next season, there's 1 of 3 guys right there. Soriano, Kikuchi, Detmers. That's a big boon for the starting rotation going into 2026.
Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Now for your second listen, check out Locked On MLB Game Night. Every game, every night until the World Series champion is crowned. You can get local analysis on a national scale, and you can find Game Night on the Locked On MLB YouTube channel or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey, be sure you give us a follow on Twitter at Locked On Angels and at Super Halo Bros on Twitter and Instagram. Once again, whether you're watching or listening, come on over to today's show, get in the comments section. Again, we read all your comments. We always do our best to try to respond to everybody, and your conversation or your comments are often part of our conversations here on the show. Mike, what do we have on deck as we head into the weekend series against the Astros?
Well, John and I have a special event tomorrow, so we are not planning on being here on the show. I know you're going to miss us. Thank you for missing us.
Right.
We plan on being back on Monday, and so look for us Monday. We might have something special for you this weekend. We're not sure about the timing on that, but we are guaranteeing that we'll be back on Monday on Locked On Angels.
Yeah, talking about the end of the season, my friends. And so we'll definitely be here Monday. If anything that we plan for the weekend comes out, the first place you'll know is on YouTube and, of course, on social media as well. We'll pop up in your feed over the weekend. All right, friends, we hope you have a great weekend. Until then, my name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
Thanks for being here, everybody. We hope you have a great weekend, and we'll see ya when we see ya.
You're good. You're so good. I'm not good.